Welcome to the web series, The Hero's Call, where champions of safety and justice in the community are profiled. The series is co-hosted by attorney Marc Diller and his colleague, Dr. John Naranja. Dr. John is both an attorney and a doctor.
Sexual assault of children is a problem of epic proportions. We saw directly with the U.S. Gymnastics how when organizations turn a blind eye to abuse, the problem just doesn't disappear. Today on Heroes Call, we welcome and feature Kim Dougherty. She's a Massachusetts lawyer who has spearheaded the fight and is bringing about systemic change. Welcome to the Heroes Call.
Thank you, Marc. Thank you, Dr. John. Appreciate you covering this important issue.
Thanks. Kim, can you just introduce yourself? Tell us who you are and what the nature of your practice is.
My name's Kim Dougherty. I am the founder of Justice Law Collaborative, co-founder and partner with Paula Bliss. And I've been practicing plaintiff side law for quite some time now, almost 20 years, and have moved primarily into the area of representing survivors of sexual assault.
So as a colleague and a friend, we love the work that you're doing, and I think it's great. Can you share with us a little bit about the problem of sexual assault of children that you've observed in your practice?
Yeah, it's a very unfortunate epidemic in our society that continues to today. A lot of people think it was a problem of the past, and it really is still a problem of today and in the future. Childhood sexual assault is rampant in various institutions, organizations across this country. And there have been too many of them who have turned a blind eye and put their reputation before the safety and protection of children. And we are now taking on those institutions. We are taking on those organizations and seeking accountability and change. And we are fighting for obtaining justice, not through just compensation, but change in the future to protect children and make sure these types of issues don't happen again.
Kim, tell us, how did you first get involved in doing this type of work? What was it that brought you to this area of practice?
I originally got my master's in social work, and I was toddling between law and social work and not knowing whether I wanted to take the psychology piece and move forward with that after getting my bachelor's in psychology. So I went to Columbia, where they had a program, and 3 days a week you're put into doing social work directly. I was able to choose what area I could practice in, and I worked on child protective cases and delinquency cases with an interdisciplinary team of social workers and lawyers. While helping each individual was meaningful and helpful to them, the problem was systemic and that laws needed to be changed. And so that led me, to law school. And then ultimately, when the Me Too movement happened, that's when my area became primarily representing assault survivors. There was just finally a flurry of people who decided that, time was up and they were going to share their story and seek accountability.
Kim, what I'd like to focus on a little bit today is your work with the USA Gymnastics and the US Olympic and Paralympic Committee and the lawsuit that you were involved in there. Can you please share with us a little bit about how you got involved in that case and kind of what was involved in it?
Yeah, I originally started getting involved in the USA Gymnastics and Olympic Committee cases through referral, essentially. Someone who knew that I was really doing this type of work and trusted that I would do a job in a trauma-informed way to really help this survivor bring forth her case that she had repressed for decades. Marcia Frederick is the first female to win gold for the United States in the World Championships for gymnastics back in the late 1970s, early 1980s. She basically put gymnastics on the map for females, put USA on the map, and was essential to developing more athlete interest. And she came to me and told me her story of disclosing the abuse that her coach was putting her through and how he said, in order for you to be an Olympian and to be the best in the world, you have to be close with me. You have to be intimate with me. And throughout that time, she was, sexually immature, didn't know what was happening, didn't understand. She was taken, out of her parents' home, because that's what they do when you're an elite athlete. They put you in a residential home where you train all day long. They give you homeschooling. They monitor what you eat. They monitor everything about your life, including when you can see or talk to your parents. They have to have, appointments. So this was an opportunity for a pedophile to just come in and take advantage of someone who was vulnerable. And when she finally started to find her voice and say, this is wrong, she told her coaches, she told everyone around her, and nobody did a thing. Late 70s is when the abuse was occurring. She disclosed to them in the early 1980s, asked for help, and did not get it. And her following coach, Don Peters, is well known for being someone who assaulted women for decades thereafter. So because she was so betrayed, again, betrayed, one, by her coach, and then two, betrayed by her the people who owned the gym and the people who were caring for her, that she quit gymnastics and repressed a lot of this and started a family. And once everything started coming out with Larry Nassar and all of those issues, she said she found her voice again and said, this isn't going to happen. I tried to make a change back decades ago, and look what's happening now. So we filed her lawsuit in Massachusetts. We filed it against the Olympic Committee. We filed it against USA Gymnastics.
I just want to make sure I understand the timeline, Kim. So Miss Frederick's abuse and her actually notifying USA Gymnastics, that all occurred at a time that predates Larry Nassar and Dr. Nassar and the abuse that he was perpetrating?
That's right. That's right.
And so if I understand correctly, if in the early 80s, if USA Gymnastics had taken Miss Frederick's complaint seriously, if they had started to implement or institutionalize some systemic change in the system, we may not even be here today talking about Dr. Nassar and all of the abuses that have taken place since. Is that correct?
That's right. Her and others who reported back in the 80s, and then went on to be, serially assaulted by Don Peters, the Olympic coach. Yeah, there were multiple years and decades where change could have been effectuated, and it went swept under the rug.
So first, let me tell you, I can certainly identify with your path to the legal profession, in which you first were thinking about helping individuals, and that kind of grew into helping make systemic changes to organizations and institutions. That being said, when you first started looking at the Marcia Fredericks case, obviously that wasn't an individualized case. Can you talk a little bit more about what systemically was going on with the USA Gymnastics?
Yeah, I think systemically at that time, there was a lot of cover up. They started to realize the word was getting out about Nassar, and that they couldn't just, pay people off and quietly let this issue go away. And I think at that point in time, Marcia felt really emboldened to tell her story and say, it wasn't just Nassar. These coaches have been abusive for decades, and have been assaulting people for decades. And we had other clients that felt that way as well. USA Gymnastics never even reported her complaint to law enforcement. So, not only was her perpetrator able to continue on and have access to young children, which is again another impetus that brought her to bring her case. She saw that he was coaching still. But also law enforcement wasn't involved. So there were these issues that we thought were really critically important to get out there and to get attention and exposure, and to try to change.
Now, I believe that with this case, you also identified some significant legal hurdles, especially related to a case that happened in the 70s and was covered up and only identified later on, perhaps in the 80s and beyond that. Tell us a little bit more about those legal issues you identified.
So we work on change of laws throughout the country because those are significant hurdles to access justice. The statute of limitations are a problem nationwide. And so we've worked on trying to make that change as well, so that when a survivor is finally ready to come forward, they can actually seek accountability. That, you know, these institutions don't get to go with a free pass for decades and continue on with their bad behavior. And so we also work on the non-monetary piece of that change as well, you know, in terms of how to move forward with policy and procedure change.
So in your work, Kim, this access to justice for individuals, you're going up against some pretty big institutions and corporations. Tell us how does that make you feel, and how are you doing that?
You know, the power comes from the survivors. The courage is really with them. And if we could do anything to make sure that their voice is heard and to protect people in the future, I don't care who it is. We'll go against them and we'll take it on. That's what we do. That's what I feel lawyers are obligated to do.
So it looks like here we have a class action complaint and jury demand. Can you talk a little bit about what we're looking at here and your involvement in this case?
Yeah, so with Marcia's case, when she finally was ready to come forward and Marcia was ready to file her lawsuit, you know, we looked big picture. We looked at who are the possible responsible entities involved in allowing her abuse to continue and doing nothing about it, which is why we ended up suing USA Gymnastics, the Committee, her coaches, the coach that perpetrated. And we also brought a class action piece to that because Safe Sport required that any suspicion of child abuse be reported to law enforcement. And that didn't happen in her case. And if that's not happening, and USA Gymnastics and the Olympic Committee aren't reporting any suspicion, it doesn't have to be proven, the suspicion, then these pedophiles are going to continue to be on the streets and have access to perpetrating against children. So that was really significant for us to move forward, both on her individual case, but also on a class level. And I think that it effectuated change because we saw, you know, USA Gymnastics in the bankruptcy reported every single claim that they got. And that's what they should have done. They should have done that the first time around. And you know, now they know, look, we're going to hold you responsible for that. We will sue you for violating Safe Sport and make sure that you're doing this in the future. So I think that was really an important, powerful piece there.
Yeah. So those non-monetary commitments were really what you were chasing, right? That was the systemic change. That was it wasn't about the monetary compensation. It was those non-monetary commitments that would hopefully prevent this from happening again. Correct?
That's absolutely right. Not one survivor really has any care in the world about the money. And frankly, I've seen survivors leave money in trust accounts and settlement funds for over a year, because that's not what they want. They want change. They want to ensure protection of children in the future. They want to know that, you know, what they went through, nobody else is going to have to go through.
I know that this also led to something called the Restorative Justice Task Force. Can you talk a little bit about that?
That's right. So when we were finally done with it, there were 6 pages single spaced of non-monetary commitments that we were able to get USA Gymnastics to agree to, and for the Olympic Committee to also be involved and get behind. And part of that was dealing with reporting issues that we heard before. Part of it was, you know, ensuring we have survivors on 3 different boards so that their voices could be heard. And then the latter piece was the Restorative Justice Task Force that was put into place to ensure that these were not just words on paper, but they were going to actually be implemented over time, monitored, audited, to assure that the change that they were agreeing to is actually going to happen and be implemented.
thank you so much for that commitment that you've made. Has it been difficult implementing it? Have you found pushback as you've been trying to force that upon these organizations?
You know, surprisingly, it's been a collaborative effort. And we are working together, I think, well with USA Gymnastics and with the Olympic Committee, because I do believe that they understand that this change needs to happen.
Kim, we draw great inspiration and motivation from our clients who have the courage to come forward and to take on wrongdoers in order to deter this type of bad behavior from continuing to proliferate. In your situation with these survivors of sexual assault, the amazing courage that these women in this circumstance, and I'm sure you represent, may be exposed to some men who also are victims here as well, that they have to stand up to these wrongdoers and to make sure that they tell their story, expose their vulnerability and stand up for it, must be remarkable. How does it make you feel as their advocate, as standing behind them, to be able to tell their story and to be able to give them that voice?
Yeah, I feel extremely proud, honored, and privileged to be able to help them tell their story, to find their voice, to gain their power back. I am in awe and inspired by them every day, what they've gone through, the horrific scenarios, the horrific suffering, and the fact that they have the courage and the strength to say, this is wrong, this shouldn't happen to me, and this is what you did to me. It's incredible. I'm in awe, always inspired and just honored to help be a part of their team and part of their healing and the moving, forward change in the future that will be positive, that will turn this horrific situation into a positive for them.
Kim, we're very proud to call you a colleague and a friend. I feel very privileged to know that we're on the right side of justice, the one that we both agree with. And I love the work that you're doing. We love your commitment to the change. And we're so appreciative that you have shared your story and the story of all of those survivors with us. And you'll continue to do great work in the future. So thank you for being a part of Heroes Call.
Yeah, thank you guys for what you do and everything, and working with you guys in the future. I just am really excited about what we do next. What you guys are doing is really important to our practice, and we appreciate you covering these important issues. Without you, sometimes these stories don't get told. So much appreciated, and I thank my clients for giving me the opportunity to be there and represent them.